Welcome to the Arts to Hearts podcast, a show for artists, creators, creative entrepreneurs to have heartfelt conversations about living a creative life and a career. As you go into this show, hear your favorite creators talk about money, mindset, business, creativity, and everything else that goes behind into making a life that we all adore as an artist. Hear the messy and the wonderful side of being a creative. I am your host, Charika Arora, an artist, creator, and founder of Arts to Hearts project. Thank you for joining me here. Let's jump right in. Hey, you guys, welcome back to the Arts to Hearts podcast. This is your host, Charika. How are you doing? I'm so glad to be back on the podcast. It's one of my favorite things to do. And today, it's been so interesting. I just had a wonderful conversation with Vinita Munki, who's going to be the guest for this episode. Vinita is an artist, a sculptress based out of Mumbai, and she just had her first solo show with Chimol Shift, which is a gallery based out of Mumbai. We spoke about so many things. She was just so amazing and honest. Her work is gorgeous. We spoke about her work. We also spoke about a lot of things that, a lot of emerging artists, any kind of artists actually have. It's just not emerging. She shared why she felt the call to come back to India, working in a foreign country and making a work informed by her own culture and society, why she moved back, what informs her work, the basic struggles, one of her major struggles, as a sculptor, how she put together this show, how she gauged these opportunities, and basically what she's looking forward in her practice now. It's been such a wonderful conversations, and I think what I really liked about this episode was how honest she was. She did say a lot of things that that were very, very maybe controversial for some, but she was just being very honest and herself about it, which is absolutely what this podcast and I stand for. So yeah, I think it's been such an great experience to speak to her. I just found her work a few weeks ago. I didn't know about her work, and when I saw, the show, and I virtually did my research and I found her work. I was just so interested in catching up with her. So that's about that. Let's get into this episode and let's hear what Vinita has to say. Hey, you guys, welcome back to the Arts to Hearts podcast. This is your host, Charika, and I'm back in today's episode with an amazing artist that I found only a few weeks ago. So, I don't want to take too much of time because we are already a lot short on time. So, I want to introduce you to my guest right into this episode and welcome Vinita Munge. Vinita, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. Can't wait to get into this conversation with you.
Thank you, Vinita. Vinita, before we go into the conversation, can you introduce yourself and what you do, who you are for anyone who's listening to this episode and doesn't know you yet? Also, me, I'm really interested in knowing you now.
For sure, of course. So I started my formal art education in sculpture in ceramics at SAIC, which is the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. And before going to college, I always say that I had no idea what art was. I thought I was good at it, but only after going to art school did I understand what art is. I used to think that being good at art is, being good at drawing or painting or making pretty looking things.
Yeah.
But only after going to college did I realize that it's so much more than that. And it's not about that at all. In fact, I think that's the reason why oftentimes art school has like a really high dropout rate as well, because students come in without knowing what to expect. And luckily for me, what I ended up finding was something I fell in love with. So just the entire idea of dedicating your life to the practice of making and creating was what I wanted to do, no questions asked. And then came along ceramics. And then that was another whole love affair. And I love and hate, to be honest, because ceramics can be very challenging and demanding as well. But it's very giving and very malleable and very fluid at the same time. So that was kind of where, when I started working with ceramics. So 4 years of undergrad was that, like my solidification of my art practice and my choice of career. And then I was very, very certain that I wanted to come back to India and be an artist here, a contemporary artist here, because I felt like trying to develop a artistic language, speaking about concepts that are not really applicable to a non-Indian audience, was not where I wanted to start my career at. I felt like it would be a cop out of sorts
Okay.
to be there and talk about being Indian and talk about my experiences as an Indian woman,
Yeah.
obviously a woman of color. It would probably shut down the avenues of critiques and criticisms that I would want to be exposed to if I'm actually in a setting where people understand me, understand
Yeah.
who I am, and get the context that I come from. So, and I started feeling that towards the end of my undergrad and college itself, that I'm not getting what I want from the conversations I'm having about my work. I learned a lot
How,
of skills and I learned.
if can you talk a little bit more about this? That because I somewhat understand, but I really want to talk. Uh, when you're talking, your work really focused, like, is concerned about gender sexuality, especially
Mhm,
a modern, like, Indian woman's role in India, in our
mhm.
society. Um, you studied. Did you spend any more time before your college abroad, or was that your first only?
No, I did actually. 2 years before that, I'd done like a summer school in London, again, studying fine arts, which was kind of like a very broad idea of studying art. But
But
I
that was
had
also a
that
smaller
experience.
period of time, not as long as
For
this
sure,
one.
for sure. No,
Yeah.
no, just a few months.
So, so was it like also your time spent there that made you feel certain way? Um, that felt that lack of belongingness, if I may say. I don't know if is that
Hmm.
something that also
No, no,
played a
I
role?
actually, yeah. No, I know what you mean by that. And initially, it was a great breath of fresh air because
Yeah.
you are surrounded by creators from all around the world. Because it's not just Americans, even, it's a lot of international crowd coming in.
Yeah.
And it was a great learning experience because there would be things that I didn't even know existed that people were literally making art about. So it was
Yeah.
such a unique way of understanding culture and language and dialects and all sorts of wonderful things. But towards the end of the 4 years, and 4 years is a long time,
Long
to
time.
be honest, making art, I started feeling like I wanted to make work that was relevant to me, and I
Yeah.
wanted to make it for people that would find it relevant.
Yeah.
Of course, the end goal is to be an international artist. I want world recognition. Who doesn't? I
Yes,
want my art to be
absolutely.
around the world. I want people to get eyes on my work to understand what I'm talking about. But my thought process started from, yes, of course, I feel strongly about feminism. I feel strongly about equal rights. And then I started learning and reading up on it, and I realized that I don't know anything about feminism that originates in India. The
Yeah.
only kind of feminism I know is white oriented, white eye, white gaze feminism.
Yeah.
And even the writers I was reading, whether male or female, they were all
Yeah.
people of a different race and
Yeah.
culture. So I was like, no, then how is this something that I can relate to myself? Which is
Yeah.
when I started reading up on post-colonial feminism, and I
Yeah.
did like a online degree on it, just
Yeah.
so I can read more, just for that
Yeah.
very reason, to understand like what Indian feminist movements mean in the context of history, what where I stand in context with them, and so on. And I think that is another reason why I was confident I wanted to come back and
Yeah.
always be like an India-based Indian contemporary artist.
Yeah.
Um, and this is no fault at all of my college because or even the students I was studying with, because critiques would often end up being more about technique or skills
Yeah.
or
Because they didn't
materials as
probably have the
opposed to
scope of
content.
knowledge of that.
Exactly,
Absolutely. I mean, I
exactly.
think it's also because I can relate to this, because it's also finding roots, and it's not about abroad or country or like stuff like that, but
Hmm.
like recently, even in my own work, because I grew up in Agra, I have a lot of architectural influence, influence of the Mughals, and because that's how we grew up. I saw a lot of that, and that comes back to
Hmm.
me back and again. And I do feel like the moment I feel like I'm going away with something like that, I feel like it's going to alter my practice, and the more time I spent around that, it alters, like, it's also sense of belongingness and finding
Hmm.
your roots.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And I think it's important. What would oftentimes happen is my professors would be like, you need to bring your own personality into
Mm.
the work, you need to bring your own culture into the work. And I would feel like that's super contrived. Like you want me to make like typical traditional Indian
Yeah.
looking ceramics into my artwork, which is not who I am at all. But
Yeah.
I understood where they were coming from because I was making impersonal work and it looked impersonal and I felt
Mm.
like I didn't feel
Yeah.
authentic making the work there. And today, retrospectively, I think of that work as just a way of learning the material, the techniques, more so than developing my concept. That only happened after I came back.
But
And
okay, tell
I
me
think that
something.
key
How did
shift,
this shift
mhm.
happen for you? Especially, you just
I was literally
mentioned,
saying the same thing.
you mentioned like, you felt this is something a lot of artists like, we can
Yeah.
feel it. Like, even though when I think there's a denial mode, and there's an acceptance mode, and there's an action mode. A lot of time we feel, oh, this is us, this is us, this is me, this is me. Then you suddenly realize, no, this is a collective influence of what I like, that I feel is me. Then you discover what you really are out of those experiences and influences, and then you create that. Now, this is also a very abstract notion, because there's no definition of how you say, okay, this does not feel authentic. Like, no, be really, I don't think. Can you break it down?
Very true. No, like I think for me, I know exactly how that happened for me. I
Yeah.
can pinpoint it for me, but I can of
Go
course say
ahead
that's not
then.
at all how it will happen for anyone else.
Yeah.
But just for me, I think coming back, working part time at my studio, I was also doing a job at that point, and I would of course be desperate to go back to the studio every opportunity I got, and then I would just sit there and make because I
Yeah.
had like all the work that I had in college, I didn't want to add to my portfolio of work. I didn't want to show it as my work. So that meant that I had to start from scratch, which means that I had actual work to make to show.
Make.
And ceramics is so time consuming and demanding that it can't be something I can create within a month even. It took
Yeah.
me 2.5 years to even have a few works ready.
Yeah.
And I think in the course of just making, that shift organically happened. Sometimes it was because I'm running out of space in my studio, so I need to start working small. I need to
Small.
shift my concept. It was that. Sometimes it was what I was reading. It was these other
Yeah.
interests that had started coming into my work organically. That transference happened
Yes.
without me consciously making an effort to. I think it just happened organically. And I think
Right.
reading and all these other things that we were drilled into doing in college that I personally didn't know how much it would help. Now, retrospectively, I can say it definitely does.
Yes,
It the
absolutely.
research, the
Right.
reading, looking at other work, looking at other artists, like even if it's not exactly what you'd end up working with or anything even to do with it, it's going to help you conceptually in
Absolutely.
as your own person to develop. So I think that was a
Absolutely. I
huge
think what I've also
factor.
discovered is I was never a reader. I have learning disabilities. So for me, reading is a very big hard thing. But
Right.
there two very but I consume information. I know I need to learn. So I consume, this has
Hmm.
been a learning curve that I discovered about myself. Like, I needed, I knew I can't read textually, even though I've done an
Hmm.
honors in history, which is, I just don't even know how I did that. This is just out of my mind. I did it. I don't know how that happened. But, also looking at books. For me, I love photo picture books. I love research based books, which are driven by visuals. And
Hmm.
I'm an audiobook addict. And the more you spend time in these things, like, I've been collecting books for so long now. I mean, ever since I've
Hmm.
consciously been collecting, like, even with my own practice, like I would spend a lot more. I've been like doing a lot of textile based books right now, like a lot of Indian textiles, Indian fashion, Mughal art. And I think it's like a thread that connects you. It's like a work in its own. Like your mind is also working in a direction that you also don't know at all.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. Like, I think just allowing yourself to be a sponge in the start of like your career is the way to go about it. Whether you're looking
Absolutely.
at art, whether you're attending a couple of gallery openings, whether you're reading up on something, whether it's just a random interest, say you're like interested in botany and you start reading about it, you don't know how that's going to end up influencing whatever you do in life, even beyond your artistic practice. I
Yeah.
think it's important to keep engaging with yourself, with others, with books, with informative like pieces of writing or visuals. I think it's just important to find a way that you can contribute to your own learning as a person. Like the
Absolutely.
day you stop
Absolutely.
doing that, you're going to feel stagnant, no matter what you're doing
Yes,
in life.
that's true. Okay,
Hmm.
I have a question.
Hmm.
You are in quite a beginning of your career,
Mhm.
and um, you just had your solo show. You've been able to show your work through a great platform. Um, a lot of things that not all, beginning artists or people who just not, irrespective of age, I feel like we all are, um, we start our different chapters of life at very different point of time. That does not have anything to do with age, but just anyone who's at that beginning. How has that really, a your experience of mapping that? What did you think when you came out of the art school? How you were, especially now that you were not only out of an art school, you came from another country back to your home country, then navigating that space, and then finally, finding something, not only something, a great opportunity. Let's talk about
Yeah.
that.
It's, I mean, I'm going to say something that's going to be very controversial now, because a
No
lot of these
problem.
young artists have been coming into the gallery, and they've been
Yeah.
asking me, how did you do this, and like, how does it feel, like what was the path that you went on to
Yeah.
reach this outcome? And I'm like, I literally was a hermit. I sat in my studio and I made work. I
Wow.
literally, I hate socializing. I do not like going out and making connections and networking. I'm
Yeah.
not that person at all. And I used to, in fact, be that person wondering, how am I ever going to make it? I'm just sitting in my studio making work. No one knows what I'm doing. But at the same time, I couldn't help myself. I literally don't know what else to do with myself but make work. I love it, and it's my life. I hate it. I love it. I have like consuming feelings towards my practice.
So
But
let's dig
yeah.
deeper.
But let's backtrack a little.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. First,
going
let's
back to
hear
art
your
school.
thoughts. Yeah, let's hear your thoughts
Yeah.
when you
Okay.
came back from art school.
Yeah. Let's
We've
go
had
back there. Yeah.
all, yeah, we've had all sorts of in the past. I think this is going to be 80th,
Yeah.
81st episode, maybe 84 episode in by the time we publish this. So we've had a lot of different opinions. Some people have
Hmm.
had really
Yeah.
sideways opinions, someone in favor, but typically a lot of people feel lost, no clue how to do
Hmm.
things. They only know how to make.
Hmm.
But the real world has changed. A lot of people, if
Yeah.
they don't feel that they're adapting, they feel left behind. Like all of those feelings, this is a very common narrative that we've heard from up our guests in the past. Let's hear what is your
Yeah.
perspective. What happened with you?
Right. Right. So, actually, I do feel like my college put in quite a lot of effort to kind of prepare us for the real world. Because this is a
Wow.
huge issue with almost all
Yeah.
artists coming
Art
out of art
schools.
school. Because they end up, I think more than 70 to 80% of art students end up doing professions that are like
Yes.
art
Teaching jobs.
education, not necessarily within the art realm itself, like in the
Yeah.
making of art.
Yeah.
And everyone has a formal education in that essentially at college. So then how do you bridge that gap between the real art world and an art school? So they did spend a lot of time kind of, especially towards the end of our undergrad, to focus on how to procure opportunities, how to apply for grants, how to apply for shows. But then for me, I wasn't going to be in a first world country. I was going to come back to India, which was another layer of confusion and feeling of
Yeah.
how am I, and despair even, because I just didn't know how to reach there. And they would normally, the process would be, you find opportunities, you write out like an application, you talk about your concept, you talk about the body of work you would wish to create for the show or for the grant, and you hope for the best and hopefully you
Yeah.
get it or you don't. But over here, when I came back, I'm looking up all these galleries and I'm like, where are the show openings? Where
Yeah.
are the applications? Like,
Yeah.
there's nothing out there for me.
Nothing there.
And
There are
then
very few
when I
opportunities,
tried
very few
to,
galleries
exactly, and
that apply.
even grants or something like that
Yes,
are possible,
very
or even residencies, but rare again
hardly.
and very competitive. And galleries don't do that at all. Galleries
Yeah.
for like openings that are just put out there and like, oh,
Yeah.
here we are, and just send us an application.
Yeah, no,
Very,
that
very rare,
doesn't
if
work.
not at all.
Also, I think what I feel about Indian system is that that's why I have you on the podcast, because
Hmm.
this wasn't my own, like, of course I want to support as many as artists as possible, especially
Hmm.
more and more strong, upcoming, emerging, but also what Jamal is doing, the support of towards making a shift from a gallery's perspective, adding more opportunities
Hmm.
that open and create a platform, not for the only ones that have been there, but for the ones that are also
Yeah.
coming in. I mean,
Yeah.
I feel that we have a huge platform. We have opportunities that are already before people already there in the ecosystem who've reached to a certain point, but there's such a big gap in opportunities for people who are coming in who will become, you know, artists of tomorrow or
Yeah.
history makers
Yeah.
or
Yeah. Yeah.
change makers. But we don't have enough platforms. We don't have enough opportunities, and that's a very closed door. And I really really wanted to have you guys here, and maybe we'll have people from tomorrow also, because you this is like
Yeah.
opening a door, which is an amazing thing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I'm telling you honestly, like, and I'm not saying this because I'm biased, because I am biased, but I've been having this show now for a little more than a month. And
Yeah.
people have been walking in with their portfolios, and Sunaina and Atyana there, ready to look at the work, ready to have an honest and very genuine conversation with them. And I'm telling you this because I've been on the other side of the situation, and
Yes,
I have
yes,
taken my portfolio to galleries, and I've tried to speak to them, and it was always like, oh, your work is interesting. You should keep doing more of this.
yes,
This is what I was getting all the time.
yes,
And now that I've had a show, the conversation shifts to directly, oh,
yes,
your work is great, you're a success, your work is successful.
yes,
There is no
yes.
bridge between, like, I'm telling
Oh
you this
God,
very honestly.
I
Like,
love
there is
your
no bridge
honesty.
between the critique. Like, there is no
Yes,
bridge. Like, I want people to come in now and be like, oh, I wish you had done this differently. Oh, why didn't
yeah.
you make that choice? And then before I wanted someone to be like, oh, your work is also great. Like, what you're doing is also good. I didn't get any of that on either the, like, two sides of the spectrum,
And you know
which
what this
I,
shows is, it's also it's also a leap of faith and show sign of confidence. It's easier for anyone to show a sign of confidence because I see, okay, you're moving, okay, she's doing good.
Mhm.
There's of course it's like a risk analysis. Yeah, there's value in this work. If we show, the only value increases. But the first mover, someone
Yeah,
who really pushes you, who really puts you forward, that's the point. I mean, they are the ones who really believing without any I
exactly.
feel like external matters that come forward.
Exactly. Exactly. And like another thing that towards the end of the show, I have been feeling now with people coming in is that people from the art world are like, oh, these works are really great and
Yeah.
they're really successful. These like specific kind of works, like say the interactive ones, or the really large ones. And they're like, oh, we really like this. It's really successful. You should do more of that. Or then
Yeah.
people will come and be like, so what are your next steps? Are you going to be making more of the works that are the most successful? And I'm like, before this show, I didn't make works keeping what will be more successful in
Yes.
mind. So why
Yes.
would I do that now? Like,
Now. Love
I'll take
that.
all this critique back with me. It's good
Yeah.
for me. I need to hear these things because I'm
Yeah.
not making art for myself. I am making it for the audience coming in. So if there is something they're responding to more than others, of course I want to try and capitalize on that. I want to include that. I want to make my work more enjoyable and more interactable and just more pleasurable as an experience
Yeah.
because I'm
Yeah.
developing an experience as an artist through my work.
Absolutely.
And I want to inculcate all of that, but I don't want to compromise my creativity and wherever the
Right.
practice is going to take me.
This only should be a
Like the
catalyst,
day,
not like a set
exactly,
something holding you
not
back.
the determining factor.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like, and I think it's important for us to have these critical conversations as well,
Yes.
even after getting a little bit of success or a lot of success or no success at all.
Yes.
And
Mm.
yeah, I really hope that kind of gets inculcated into the art world and the way of
Yeah.
looking at art as
I love that. I love that. Absolutely. And it's like,
well.
I think what I also really liked about the show was, for some, I'm someone like, I love, of course, I appreciate the white galleries and all of that, but just something really bold. I love making statements, and I love when people really challenge, because see, we're all in a creative world. We're in the our primary job is creativity. And when you feel
Mhm,
called to something and when you do it, even if it's, maybe against the systems, non-stereotypical, but it's also a sign
mhm,
of creativity. Like, I really loved
mhm,
how your show was put together, and the casualness, and also approaching a younger audience. And
mhm.
I think it's such a good sign for every other gal, like in the ecosystem, that it's time that we
Yeah,
change shifts, like create with every new audience, with every new generation, with every new opportunity. There's a chance to create something new, do it differently, do it in a like
Hmm.
open up a bit, move things, and
Yeah,
make that shift. And that's, I think, that's very rightly said. Like, there's a shift
exactly.
needed,
Yeah.
and then we need to act on that shift.
Yes, 100%. Like we've also been doing ceramic workshops at the
Yeah, I saw
gallery, and
that.
we've done like four now, and we plan to do one.
Yeah.
And we ended up doing four because of just like the turnout. And people were DMing us. People are still DMing us, being like, please, two more workshops. And I think that itself is a novel concept. I don't think there are
Yes.
many galleries that would be open
Yes,
to
which is
conducting workshops
exactly,
within
and
the gallery space. But
which is something that's strange here, but that's been happening all over the world. I mean, it's not
exactly,
new.
exactly.
It's just
And
close. It's like,
it's not undermining the value of the
yeah,
space or the artwork or the artist. In fact, it's building a bridge
building.
between the audience and the artist more and more
This is
every
something that
time we do the workshop.
I've always said on the podcast. Like, I have a huge connect, and we have like a community based out of all over the world. And then when I have these conversations and when I see this, I've seen a huge difference in the way people perceive art there and versus how the role of
Mm-hmm.
art here. People have, like, I feel like in India we've not have had access. Art is only for the aristocrats. It's only for a certain audience. It's not been flowed down through the system because it's not accessible. Understanding of art. I remember, like, even when, like, a lot of my friends
Mm-hmm.
are entrepreneurs and they come from the business world, and like they've never stepped into a
Yeah.
gallery unless I don't take them. Whenever I
Mm-hmm.
take them to a gallery, they're so intimidated, and a lot of things don't make sense for them. They don't understand. And recently, one of our artists did this solo show on his own, which was amazing. Like, he put together his own show, and I took them there,
Right.
and I saw there was a huge difference in the way they responded. They felt so more comfortable. They asked questions. They didn't feel afraid of, like,
Mm-hmm.
they had to behave in a certain way, or
Yeah.
they can
Yeah.
touch the work, or there's an artist. It's like a casual, like, that conversation, and that comfortness was created in that experience, that I
Yes.
feel like
Yes. Yes.
that is needed, because a lot of people are intimidated.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And I keep saying this again and again whenever I meet someone who's like, oh, I don't understand anything about art. And my immediate response to that is artists never make art for other
For
artists.
you. Yeah.
We make art for the common man. We make art for the average man. Like, we're not doing this for each other. We're not doing this for the community. We're doing this for everyone.
Everyone.
We Art used to be a way of making a political statement, a socio-political statement. And who is that statement being made for? Not other woke,
Yeah.
quote unquote people, right? It was for
Yeah.
the average man to try to say something, to maybe move them, to
Yeah.
try and create a new way of thinking for them. All these reasons for why we made art. So why is it different now? That's exactly what we're still continuing to try to do with art. And hopefully, with I think even with Shift, they're trying to do a lot of
Yeah.
school visits and like trying to get like
Wow.
more younger people in as well. So not just our age, but a lot younger than us as well to
I'd
come
see
in
the
because
impact
we
it would
want.
bring in the longer run. I think that would be so
Yeah,
wonderful.
exactly. It breaks down this notion of, oh, this is something very
You
like
can do.
high class and high society that we can't just approach and come into. But that's
Yes.
not true at all.
And I think the biggest I didn't. So I grew up in a smaller town, and
Hmm.
I grew up very closely to craft. So craft was something that's
Right.
been very close to my heart. But I
Hmm.
didn't know what art meant. Like, for me, I'd never seen a real artist. Like an artist, like, commercial jobs are like, I knew my mom. I was always into
Yeah.
fashion. That was my first love. But that was the only scope of what could be possible. Unless I hadn't seen someone, I'd never known that this could be a
Yeah.
possibility
Yeah.
for me too. If this has happened for you, it can happen for
100%.
me too. So I think even bringing that awareness in early age, and seeing that, okay, Vinita is a sculptress, and she's certain so and she comes from our ethnicity, belongingness. It makes me feel okay. Yeah, a child can feel okay if she can do it. Oh my God, yes, I can also do it. Like, I feel like her, and
Yeah.
that's so encouraging, because that gives people more power to become more creative.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. Like, seeing students who now go to SAIC, or people who are even students who are like now applying to SAIC, and then they see that full circle with me they feel like, oh yeah, like I can be an Indian artist too.
Yeah.
I don't have to stay back in America and try to
Yeah.
make a name there. I can come back to my own country, to my own city, and try and like make a name for myself here, do things that are important and relevant here. And I think that is all I really want at the end of the day. Because I feel like rather than complaining about not having a community of like-minded individuals, we need to build one. And this is the
Absolutely.
right way to do it. This is the right way
Absolutely.
to do it.
Okay, tell me something. Let's go back. We missed that point. Then what happened? Okay, so
Mhm.
you were when you came back, what were your initial
Right,
thoughts? Like,
right.
did you feel what did you do?
So like I told you, first things first, I wanted to start building a portfolio because I
Yeah.
felt like without any work, I have nothing to show. I have nothing to really even get people to try and believe in me with. So first things, I fortunately have the privilege to be able to afford to make my own studio, to be able to
Yeah.
get my own materials, to be able to get my own kiln. That itself is huge. And
Yes.
I spent a lot of my college apologizing for my privilege. I think now I've come to terms with it.
Yeah.
So I had those opportunities. Now it was up to me to make the most of them.
Make the most of it.
And for the first 2.5 years, that's all I did. I basically just sat at my studio 7 6 7 hours a day every day, just making work. Once in a month, I would go for art night. I would go for all the gallery openings, and that's basically how I would try and meet people and at least get my eyes on new work. Because otherwise, I'm just in isolation looking at my own work, which
Yes.
is very stagnant.
Yes.
And that is basically how I kind of went about it for the first few years of my career. And then I I happened to know Atyan just because we went to Kochi together for the Biennale through a bunch of common friends. And then she and Sunena came by the studio. They had no idea what to expect. They knew I made sculptures and they were looking for young artists. And they came by and then that was that. And then they were like, no, we love your work. We definitely want to show it. And that's how we went about it. But it's not been easy.
Yes.
It's kind of hard to get people to believe in you when you're not sure if you should be believing in yourself.
Yes.
There's a lot of self doubt involved. But there was a lot of self doubt involved, but I never ever questioned my decision to want to make art. I
Yes.
knew that is what I wanted to do from
Wonderful.
the get go, from my first semester in college to, well, yesterday when I was at my studio making work again.
Yeah.
So I think just consistency is easier said than done, but it is
Yes.
literally the only
Only.
way to kind of achieve what you want to do.
Yeah.
Just don't stop. Like I was about to sell my first large work a few months before my show, and it didn't fall through. And then
Oh
that piece
wow.
ended up being a part of the show, and it got sold as a consequence of the show. So in a way, I'm glad that I
Yeah,
didn't
it
make that
happened.
sale, because then I got to show it in my show and then have so
Sure.
many eyes on it, rather
Yeah.
than just those few people who would have ended up purchasing that one. But
Yes. I
I
love
guess,
that. Let's just
yeah.
talk a little bit more about the struggles because I feel like people see the glorified side, they see the outcome, they see the
Mhm,
smiles and everything, but we all know there's so much more that goes behind those success stories.
mhm.
With every little one success there are 100 failures that not everyone gets to know about, listen about.
Yeah,
Let's talk about something things that you felt were challenging, that also helped you make this shift, because it's also like I the feeling of having your work at one place, the feeling of seeing them get through, and it's like a huge, it's
yeah,
like a huge cloud of so many different feelings coming together. So
mhm,
it's definitely
yeah,
a thing to celebrate. But let's also talk about what the paths that you've crossed to come here, the mindset
yeah.
struggles, like you said, self-doubt, like your experience of building this show. Let's also talk about that.
No, 100%. And for me, it was also very challenging to make ceramic work. It wasn't just about making art. My material is very challenging to manipulate and to work with. And then coming to India and finding a way to build in a way that no one else works. Because no
Yes.
one that I knew of was working with large scale ceramic sculptures that are completely hand built. I use a coiling method. So it literally starts with one coil, two coil, three coil, all the way up. So whether it's like a little 15-inch piece or whether it's a 5 foot tall piece, it all starts with that really time consuming building process. And then I also struggle a lot with finding what is the best way to go about this. And like
Yeah.
even after my college experience, it's not the same infrastructure back home in India.
Yes.
And getting my kiln, once I made the decision that no, I wanted to invest in a studio and a kiln, that took another year. My
Yeah.
work was literally sitting in my studio and I had no space to work anymore, which is when
Yeah.
I started kind of reducing the scale of my work as well. I started working
Right.
really small and detailed and minute because I'd run out of space in the studio. And then getting the kiln made took a year because the person making my kiln had no prior experience working at the scale. I have a 5 foot by 5 foot size
Oh
electric kiln, which is
goodness.
probably one of the biggest kilns in the country, electric.
Oh goodness.
So it was a task for him to make it, and he was making it in my studio.
Oh
So
wow.
with all my fragile, unfired, basically super, super delicate work, and just hoping for the best, hoping that it'll all work out at the end. So that was challenging. And then after having accomplished that one hurdle of getting the work ready, then it was, oh, now who's going to want to show this? Like, how do I get it
Yes.
out there? And
Yes.
that was another whole layer of the challenges involved. And then I would go to galleries and they'd be like, oh, this is great, but do you have any work that is wall mounted? And I'd be like, no, I am making
It's a
sculptures. I don't
sculptures.
want to make wall mounted work. Everyone wants to buy wall mounted work, but I'm trying
Yeah.
to not do that. I'm trying
Yeah.
to change that mindset. I'm trying to make that shift and I'm not going to give it.
Yeah.
Even if that means that I need to start doing some other job on the side, I'll do that, but I won't
Yeah.
compromise my practice.
Yeah.
And then oftentimes people would be like, so I am very technically skilled when it comes to drawing and painting because I did
Okay.
a lot of that in my high school. And I used to do like hyper realistic portraiture and paintings and that kind of stuff, which is, I'm a three-dimensional thinker. I cannot think in 2D. So those skills are only that, they're skills. And if someday they lend to my practice, great, but it is not my
Yeah.
primary practice for sure.
Yeah.
And then people would see those and they'd be like, oh, why don't you do more of this? This is so beautiful. This is so attractive. And I'd be like, there is no concept to these pieces. They're just
Yeah.
replications of things that I've seen and,
You
well,
don't want that.
basically recreated. Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't see the point of that. So it was just kind of having to enforce that no, I am going to work in ceramics. It is not going to be utility. I'm not making cups and
Yeah.
pans and plates and
Yeah.
bowls. I'm not going to do that. I am going to make sculptures, and hopefully someday someone will understand the value of that
Yeah.
as well.
That's amazing. When
So
I saw your work,
yeah,
what first thing came to my mind? Let me tell you. I thought
yeah,
like you
yeah.
were like
Please.
a artsy version, like a fine art sculpture version of Rahul Mishra. Um,
Oh wow.
you two would make such a
Oh,
great collaboration. I can't even tell you. Like
that is such an interesting observation. Yeah.
I think Rahul Mishra's Enchanted Garden series that he
Yeah.
showed at Paris Fashion Week is,
Right. 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 Right.
I think, the more like, I feel like, next time probably, like, I'm just throwing it out because that's how I
No,
imagine.
but that's amazing. Yeah.
Maybe they felt like I am very, what I really, why I also resonated with you, because I really liked how you and I both have a very same subject matter and how differently we deal with it. And I
Yeah.
really liked the aesthetic value as well, even though we conceptually aligned, but aesthetically and like translationally
Very
we are so
different.
different. But even then, your work has a very strong, like, I have a huge affection towards these worldly creatures, even though especially botanicals and natural elements. And
Yeah.
I love clay. I think I for me it really matters the earthiness of a medium. I really like that.
Mm-hmm.
And when those figures, and like, they, even though they were botanical, they also felt like I could it could take me into like another fairy world, and where I could really think, like, I was just, before even talking, I was seeing the interactive work with two rabbits,
Mm-hmm.
two frogs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Two
I
frogs.
think,
Yeah.
yeah, two frogs. And for
Yeah.
me, I just can't stop imagining that. And because I think visually, I can't stop imagining
Yeah.
them like in this caricature, like this, creative world where these are these houses, or maybe these are characters, and like, it brought me that. And I, for
Yeah.
some reason, when it reminded me of Rahul Mishra's Enchanted series, and it felt like the way they also projected this fairy, this little, like, this very creative, imaginative world. I felt like these two would
Mhm.
be such a great collaborator.
No, that's so true actually. And like you said, like the medium is so different, but the visual language is similar. So it would be a beautiful marriage of the two. And I would
Yeah.
myself love to see that. Why not? That would
Yes.
be
Yes.
lovely.
Let's put it out
That
in
would
the
be
world.
beautiful. Yeah, it's said now, it's
Yes,
there
yeah, it's there
for
now. It's
everyone
going to
listening.
happen. I'll have you back. Then we'll talk about how you made that possible.
Oh wow, yeah, that'll be amazing. That'll be crazy.
No, I will share.
Of
I will
course.
share this with Rahul Mishra's, and we'll tag them. And I worked with him
Yeah.
for a very small project, so probably we'll put that out for
Okay.
him.
Yeah, for sure. That'll be lovely. Amazing.
Okay,
That's so
let's
exciting.
um, let's talk about what's coming forward for you. Like you've had the show,
Yeah.
you've got a feedback. Um, Before that, I have just one question, then we'll jump on to that.
Hmm.
I know a lot of people
Yeah.
who are going to listen to this episode will have this,
Yeah.
where you are today. You also mentioned a lot of things you've done before reaching this point.
Hmm.
A lot of artists feel discouraged. Nothing is happening. Nothing's,
Yeah.
coming. How do I make this big investment I need for my practice? Or a lot of artists don't like, they work for years and something doesn't
Hmm.
really fruitful come out the way they expect in a large scale. Of
Yeah.
course, there's small movement, but a lot of us don't recognize those movements.
Yeah.
We only want to see
Yeah.
the bigger movement, and that does not happen
Hmm.
so quickly for a lot of us.
Yeah.
People feel discouraged. You even that worked with you. You invested in a kiln even before all of this happened.
Hmm.
You had your show or anything materialized,
Yeah.
or you invested in a studio. What was How did you make those leaps with
Yeah.
removing your self doubts and the imposter and all of those away?
Yeah. So I'll actually tell you something that I don't know if you know of already, but I'm also a vegan baker and a fitness trainer.
Oh wow, I didn't know
So
that.
these, yeah. So those are kind of like my side hustles that were a consequence of the pandemic actually, because
Okay.
my studio's in an industrial estate, and the lockdown kind of completely shut me out of my studio. I had no
Oh
access to it
goodness.
because the industrial estate had to be shut, and I was not going to sit at home and not make. I am
Yeah.
not capable of sitting still. So then I just started like baking, and I used to always be a baker, but for myself and
Yeah.
for my family. And I'd also turned vegan at that point. So I was like, okay, I don't want to buy all these like processed foods outside. I want to make things at home. And that's kind of where I started from. And then I just put out photos on Instagram, and it turned into a full-fledged profession of sorts. So now I'm a vegan baker, and I'm a home baker, and I sell
Oh wow.
um, vegan food. Yeah. And I also became a
You
fitness
also
trainer.
bake your
Yeah.
ceramics and you bake your food.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You see what I mean? Like it's a very similar process for
Yes,
me. It's
absolutely. It's
that
completely.
translation is very
It's
direct.
just.
Yeah.
It's just two different outcomes, but the process is so
Yeah.
similar. You have a dough. You have a
Yeah.
dough. You need the dough. You need the dough.
Exactly.
It's so similar.
Everything. And it's unpredictable again in the oven. You
You
don't know
know
what's going
what?
to come out.
You know what? This is so interesting. This is also such
Yeah.
a good learning that how even if you read your
Yeah.
I don't know if this was accidental or, but if you map that,
Yeah.
because you've just found like a cheaper alternative play material for
Yeah,
your
basically. No, you're
practice.
100% right. That's exactly what I did with that very intention. I don't cook at all. I only
Yeah.
bake because it's a very similar way of working to what I do at my studio. And the reason for me to mention is that this was kind of my way of getting the validation that I was in through my artwork.
Yeah. Okay.
And if without validation, we can't survive.
Yeah.
As artists,
Yeah.
we
We
are
all need
low-key
something.
narcissists. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Like we believe in ourselves to be creators to make work. That is quite
Yes.
narcissistic to begin with. And then how do I continue feeling happy about myself? Because I started reaching a point of true frustration. Like me and my studio help, we are kind of the only two people in my studio. I
Yeah.
don't have any other helpers, nothing, nothing. He prepares the clay for me. He helps me load the pieces, unload the pieces. I make everything on my own. So it's just the two of us in isolation perpetually. I started getting frustrated with him, with me, with the work, with everything. And then luckily the pandemic was well timed for me because it gave me a break from my studio practice and allowed me to
Yes.
think of these other ways of being creative and channeling my energy into ways of giving and receiving as well. The receiving was super important for me at that point because I wasn't getting anything back. I was just putting so much energy into the work. And that's when these two things kind of took off, and then I got that validation. So
Hmm.
I feel like my learning lesson through all of this was that rather than trying to receive that validation by compromising your practice, try to find other avenues to get it, if
That's true.
possible. Because I don't want to become a designer. I don't want to do
Yeah.
product design because my art practice is not taking off. I don't want to turn into
Yeah.
a painter when that's not my authentic medium. I
Yeah.
would rather do something like baking, which is its own
Yeah.
thing altogether,
Yeah.
and gain that validation. Of course, if it is a financial thing, that can be a way of earning money as well. I was doing that, and without, like, I don't need to earn money for a living today, but earning money gave me that self, like,
Confidence.
respect
Yes.
and that confidence, and it regained my belief in my practice in a way. Like, yes, I can do this, then why can't I do that? Like, I
Yeah.
believe in myself. And then that kind of helped me continue even without gaining any kind of validation until that point. So I think that is just one way of how I dealt with all my self doubt.
That's amazing. That's really sounds um I mean, yeah, I mean, because this is something, you know, we all need to be very grateful for a lot of privileges we have. Not all, we all have the same
Yeah.
privileges. Like,
Yes.
a lot of people know they have to make and you know
Yes.
what I always try in our conversations with the podcast, everything we do is that there are no rules. What works for someone may not work for you because you entirely have different sets of expectations,
Hmm.
responsibilities, privileges, struggles that someone may not have. If a lot of people, a lot of us, even today, at some point, you can bear your expenses at some point, and like you said, money, someone, when they invest a hard earned money in you in whatever formats, big or small or something, it also gives us validation about our own creativity. Like, it makes you believe,
Yes.
like, if someone is willing to do this, exchange this for this material, they believe in
Exactly.
what I do. And not
Hmm.
everyone, if you have an access, if you feel like you have another creative skill. And also I feel like the notion that if you want to be this, you can't be that. You can be either
Yes.
both
Yes.
of them. It's
Yes.
not
Yes.
this or that.
Yes.
Yes, at
I.
some point you'll be a bigger artist, less known a baker if you want to be. At some point
Yes.
your baking
Yes.
would be way
Yes.
more like it's going to be, it's like a
I
movement
could
that
not
keeps
agree
coming.
more. I literally could not agree more, because my whole time as a baker and as a fitness trainer, I was like, will people think I'm not serious enough an artist because I'm doing
Yeah.
these other things? But if I can find 36 hours in a day and make everything work for me, you can't tell me that my art practice is not serious. Like,
Yes.
I know how much time and energy my material takes. I know how much effort and time ceramics takes. Forget about
Yes.
just the way I go about it even. So how could I possibly not be taking my practice seriously if that is what I
And
have
it's
chosen to
not
do?
only that, something, I am a multi-passionate, like I do a million things.
Right,
And
right.
I can't, this is how I function. I just, some days I do something, some months, some seasons, I do something way more than a lot of other things.
Yeah,
And that is the
yeah,
person who I like. For me, I can't, I need to continuously feel challenged. If anything becomes too monotonous
right.
for me, I lose my interest. And no matter what that is, even in
Yeah,
my own practice, unless something is not
right,
challenging me, I lose my interest. And I need,
right,
what in
right.
these experience of mine I've also gained and I've really gauged, that is, I really love, I become a way more informed, technically strong, conceptually challenged person when I'm just not learning from one resource. For me,
Mm-hmm.
everything and anything I do is like I resonate myself more as a creator than anything else. All of these other
Right,
parts of one identity. Some days I create in some
right,
ways. Some days, for me, Arts to Hearts is my podcast is a very big creative practice for me because, you know.
right.
It's my form of learning. It's my form of
Of course.
conceptually, thoughtfully creating something, and that's how that this informs a lot on my own practice. My work
Mm-hmm.
here, or my work in my own practice, informs a lot of my work here. Like, it's
Mm-hmm.
not this or that, it's only sometimes it's
Yeah,
a little more of this, a little less of that. And for me, it's very important to be a more, like, I want to gauge as many information as I can.
yeah,
I
yeah,
love
yeah,
learning through people and books and all of that. And it makes, I feel it informs my practice in such a more positive way than if I would have just locked my,
yeah,
I feel dead when I lock myself in the studio, honestly. I only want to do
yeah.
this when I've
No,
had information. I'm like, too much of this. Now let me go and escape. And but
Yeah.
there's a movement. We all want
Yeah.
movement. We all want connections and
100%.
learnings. So that's been great. Okay. Any My last
Mhm.
question that we were there, which was
Yeah.
what's next? What's next? I don't want to overwhelm you. It's not like, now that you've you doing this. No, I don't. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm sure there will be many, many next, and I have no intent to pressurize you. But in the sense of what next is, it's like a learning path. I feel like with every,
Hmm.
especially as an artist creative, like, when we have something, you see something before. There's this, I don't know, have you heard of jealous curator? So Daniel,
No, I
okay,
haven't.
so Daniel is a really amazing artist, really famous, and she hosts the one of the really popular podcast called the Jealous Art for Your Year, and she's known by Jealous Curator. You really need to check her out.
Okay. Oh
So,
yeah, wait, I have. Of course.
oh, okay, wonderful. So
I've
she
listened
just
to it
had.
actually at my studio.
Oh wow, you have to see her show. I think you will really love it. She also, what she
Correct.
did was, she was a collage artist, and she's just
Mm-hmm.
moved into sculptures, and she works with found objects. So
Mm-hmm.
she's really made these 3D sculpted, like in mixing clay. Like it's
Right.
really nice. So in this conversation she had on a with Peter. Peter is again an
Mhm.
amazingly widely popular, very respected sculptress.
Right.
So they were having this conversation, and Peter was also sharing about how once someone has a show, a lot of different feelings come up for different artists. For someone, it's the excitement of running back to studio. Someone, it's an overwhelm of,
Mhm.
should I continue this work? Should I make that work? And for someone, it's a total shutdown period because they want to shut their thoughts down. What's happening with you? What are you? What's
It's
going in your mind?
right. Right. Actually, everything you said is very valid, and for me, it's definitely the first. I cannot wait to go back to my studio. I already have actually. This is the longest even I've managed to kind of wean
Be
myself off the
away.
studio to go to the gallery, because it's
Yeah.
been very exciting to have one more place to go to and have my work there, and like have
Yeah.
people come in and interact with the work. So it's literally been like splitting time between the gallery and my studio. But now I'm definitely ready to go back. Like going back to an empty studio initially was kind of like overwhelming and emotional and
Yes.
happy and kind of sad at the same time.
Yes.
But now I'm
Intimidating.
just excited to go back. Yeah, yeah, it can be exactly. And it was 4.5 years of work,
Oh
which
God.
was basically my entire work since after college. That is at the show right now. So I was like, how am I going to be able to build that kind of work again? But I was actually having a really funny conversation with Atyan, and she asked me the same thing, and she was like, "What are your next moves?" And I was like, I would like to be in a group show now.
Yeah.
I've never done that, so why not? Maybe I could be in a group show. I've never been in one.
Yeah.
So
I
she was
love
like,
group shows.
"Yeah,
Yeah.
that's insane, but you haven't." Yeah, I think I would like, rather than having the pressure of building enough work to
Building
have another
stuff for
solo,
yourself. Yeah.
I would rather kind of get my work
Take
into
slow.
conversation with other works as well. Like you said,
Yes.
like that would be so interesting
Also become
to see
a
my work in contrast to
different
something else.
collaborators, like become a part of a bigger collaboration, and then like evolve
Yeah,
from
yeah, yeah,
that.
yeah. Exactly. Like I don't have to depend on myself to create an entire body of work. Then I get to kind of collaborate with other creators to build this coexistence of a body of work.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
think that would also be a lovely next step. And then I'm also considering maybe doing a residency, try and, but my residency will be more technique focused because I've been out of college now for a lot of years. And I definitely don't want to do a master's degree. I
Yeah.
like
No.
art is a very intense educative process. I don't need more of that. But I think like interesting raku or like some kind of a technique, ceramic technique based residency would be really exciting. A short one, of course, like a month or a few
Do you
weeks.
have
So
anyone in
that's
your
kind of on
mind?
my mind as well. I actually am just starting to look into them. I was looking at a few before the pandemic, but then a lot of them got
Of course.
defunded
Yeah.
because of the pandemic. So it was kind of disheartening. But then now I'm again looking, researching. But I was interested in doing one in India. I want one that will be funded though. I don't
Yeah.
want to again spend my own money to get
Mm.
into the residency. I'm hoping that on the basis of my merit and my work, I should get an opportunity.
Yeah.
So that is kind of the space towards which I'm moving. But other than that, yeah, just excited to be back in the studio making more work.
Amazing. That's so amazing. Anything else that you want to share that we haven't, like, that I haven't asked you? Anything that you feel called to? Go ahead. This is your turn.
Um, I think we have spoken about everything that I would want to mention. I think the only other thing I would mention is that as an artist, oftentimes before getting opportunities, you feel like you're at a position of disadvantage. And oftentimes you jump at the first opportunity you get, whether it is to sell or to show. But I think it's super important to also sometimes be picky, even if that means that you are not in a financial situation, but you're going to make that compromise. I think it's important to associate with like-minded individuals, even
Yes.
beyond just the realm of making, even in terms of showing, in terms of
Yes.
representation, in terms of visibility, like who's looking at your work? Are they giving you the right platform? Are they speaking the same language you are through your work, through what they're practicing, through what they're trying to do? And I think it was literally like an incredible opportunity for me with Atyan and Sunena and with Kmold Shift, because it is exactly what my work is about. It is the audience that I want to bring into the show. It's the inclusivity that my work is about. It's all these things that the gallery and the people behind the gallery represent. And
I think
I think
that's a
that's the
big
only,
one.
yeah, I think that's the only thing I would say. Like, it's okay to say no to
Yeah.
opportunities, even if it's the only opportunity right now in front of you. It's
Right.
okay to say no. But yeah.
I love that. That's such a great advice because I think social media, everything has a good and a bad. Like it has its own
Yeah.
pros and cons. It helps us
Yes.
learn from each other, grow with each other,
Hmm.
connect, and what's. But it also puts us in like this rat race a lot of times. I think a lot of times
Yes.
when I'm not there, thankfully, like a lot of things I keep myself purposely, intentionally away because I don't want to create from a place where I feel I'm creating against something. I'm when
Hmm.
the idea of just creating with my own organicness and how I in my own zone and not feeling,
Yeah.
which is again self-imposed, feeling pitted against someone else's successes, someone else's
Yes.
growth, someone
Yes.
else's
Yes.
progress. And that
100%.
just is such a, I feel for me, that's such an uneasy place to be. I don't like reading from that
So,
place.
so true. So true. And in fact, I'll tell you how I have also felt about this. I see artists who are funny. I see artists
Yeah,
who make ironic work. I am not that artist. I
right.
really enjoy that kind of work, but it's not who I am. It is not my way of working. And you have to be honest with yourself as well.
Who you
Because
are.
sometimes you will end up being, losing your value, being making work that isn't authentic. Just because you've seen something attractive or you like some other way of working.
Right.
Not you though. I think it's important to always remind yourself, like, even with your Instagram, for example, what are you
Right.
trying to do with yours? Like, I try to make my Instagram only about in studio, in progress kind of visuals, images, trying to bring the person into my studio. Because otherwise, it's such a lonely practice for me. It's
Right.
just me and Joel Villas. It's the two of us all day, every day. So then, how do I make this more enjoyable for me too? I
Yeah.
bring in my Instagram audience to my studio. So that's
Yeah.
kind of how I use it
I
as a
love
tool
that
rather than
idea.
as a vice.
Right. That's such a good advice. And I think as much as we all need to find the bits of technology now, the new way things are working. I love
Yeah,
it because of the advantages it brings to us. Because where in the
yeah.
world, like I feel like I'm so grateful to have a community like I have today because of the internet, because
Hmm.
of all these platforms to be able to talk to you, to see your work, to find you, like from finding you a few
Yeah,
weeks ago to now actually speaking to you about your work.
yeah,
It's such an amazing feeling, and I never want to give that away at like anything, but also
100%.
understanding that okay, I want to use this for a certain thing, and how, if it affects me negatively, if it makes me feel anxious, how do I limit that feeling or
Yeah,
block that idea by compensating in something in another way.
yeah, yes, 100%. Like I was telling you earlier, I'm technologically challenged. So that is whether it's a fortunate or unfortunate thing, I don't know. But in a way, I ended up using technology only to my advantage. Rest of the time, I barely know how to use half the things. I have, like I was telling you, I have the same laptop for 10 years. I'm using the same one since my undergrad. because I barely need it. I only use it for like
Yeah.
writing materials or for application process. Minimal. Checking my email. I don't even use the laptop for anything else. Like my
Oh
work is
God.
completely hands-on. Whatever I do. So
Lovely. Okay, last
this, yeah,
one thing before I let
yeah,
you go, and we also will do the rapid fire, which is we haven't really touched
yeah,
at all on about your work, and I really want to, even though we've
yeah.
just verbally spoken about
Right,
referencing,
right,
but I also want
right.
to hear your own thoughts, especially about the show. I
Mm-hmm.
will. Anyone who's listening, they can see the show. I'll link Shimol's website, Vinita's picture,
Yeah.
everything from the show and anything. But how would you describe your work and the show that you have right now?
Right. So, as we briefly touched upon during our conversation today, the work upon first glance is about these intimate worlds, these underwater sea life, creatures, plants, forests, trees, flowers, insects, animals, like all these
That's
things are the visual language of the
everything I
work.
love.
And exactly. And they're also very engrossing. Like you said, each piece is its own world with its own little
Yeah.
story that the viewer gets to make up. Like it's not me dictating the story, which is where the interactive elements come in. You get to interact with the work, move things around, create your own story within the piece itself. And the underlying meaning of the work is normalizing gender and sexuality. Now, that might not be a first takeaway from the work, and that is exactly the point. So, when you look at the work, it's all these things that I mentioned earlier. But if you look really up close, you'll see little bodily elements like little like breast looking details or
Yeah.
little like genitalia looking details woven into the architecture of these pieces. And that is where the normalizing is the key term that I'm using here comes into play because it's not a celebration. It's not just a celebration. It is not sensationalizing. It is not shocking the audience. It is normalizing these concepts through these aesthetics to the audience. So
Yeah.
that is the reason why these things might not be a takeaway from the work. It might not be things that you see at all in the work. And that exactly is what I'm trying to do because it replicates what humans, what we as our gender and sexual identities as we exist in nature are. We are very much a part of nature as much as nature is us.
Us.
As much as
Yeah.
we try to see ourselves outside of nature, we are a consequence of nature.
Right.
Our creation, our birth, our existence is a part of our environment, is a part of nature. And as is our gender, as is our sexuality, as is our identity, which is exactly what these little pieces, these environments do. These things that be seen as hypersexualized are then a aspect of the work that you might not even notice. And
Right.
that's basically what the work is about. And then
That's
through the details, through the colors, through the minor, intricate intimacies of the pieces, I'm kind of celebrating all these things that I'm saying. So I'm not angry about it. I'm not upset over it. I'm trying to celebrate it. I'm trying
yeah.
to be happy about it. I'm bringing in color. I'm bringing in joy. I'm bringing in fun into these pieces while I'm trying to say all this really serious stuff along with it.
You're doing a
So
good
that's
job
kind
with
of
that.
kind of
You're
what
doing
we.
an amazing job. I wish
Thank
I could
you.
see the show in person, but probably sometime
I
soon.
know.
We'll do like a
Hopefully,
studio
yes.
visit.
Yeah, that'll be amazing. Yeah, for
Then
sure.
I'll be you, your king, and me. You'll have like
Yeah,
another
yeah.
addition to your studio then.
It'll be amazing. No, I love having people over. It's a small space, but I love it.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. This has been so much fun, Vinita. I really, really love catching up with you. And it's one thing to see a show, but it's another only or this is also virtually, not even being there in person and like just
Yeah,
loving someone's work. But then my favorite part is to loving an artist. I think that's something I really, really,
yeah,
really
yeah,
enjoy. But are you ready for a
yeah.
rapid fire round?
I am. Let's do it.
Okay.
Let's do it.
So
I'm
there's
ready.
no right and wrong. You just have to
Okay,
be quick. Give me anything that
okay,
comes first to your mind. Okay.
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 I'm
Here
ready.
we go. One thing you want to convey through your work in the arts.
Normalizing gender sexuality.
What's
That was
that
easy.
one word? What's that one word that describes you the best?
Joyful.
If you could have a studio anywhere in the world, where would it be?
Mumbai, Marul, where I have it now.
Really?
I love my studio. Yeah, I love my studio.
Your biggest source of inspiration.
My environment, my history, my consequences, my future. Yeah.
Lovely. Who's your favorite woman artist from any point of time?
Shilpa Gupta. Shilpa Gupta. No questions asked.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
hugely inspired by her. She's incredible.
Oh, wow. Wow. Who's your go to person where you're in trouble or you're in need of advice?
My studio has, you won't believe it, but him and I,
Really?
we collaborate in my practice. Yeah, yeah. We are
Oh, wow.
troubleshooting, lifting 60, 70 kg pieces on our own, figuring out the right way to maneuver pieces, load pieces, build pieces, fire pieces. So it's him and me. My ride or die will last.
Okay, this could be more than one word, but can you share?
Yeah.
I'm sure there must have been many, but can you share like one of your favorite moments out of your time so far that really felt like one of your precious moment that, the moment that makes you realize, oh, I'm so grateful for doing what I'm doing?
I mean, this is going to sound cliche, but it has to be my opening. It's my
Yeah,
first
absolutely,
ever
man.
show. It's my first
Sure.
ever opening. So that experience is unreal. Like before the
What made
opening,
you,
less than 10
what was
people.
that one thing that you're taking? Like, what really
That,
sparked that joy for you?
yeah. No, no, literally like
In
less
that
than
event,
10
like
people
in
had
that event.
seen, yeah, in that event, less than 10 people had seen my work before the opening. And
Yeah.
having more than 100 people come
Oh,
in
wow.
on the same day, look at my work in person, was an experience that I will never forget.
Oh,
That
wow.
just blew my
I'm sure
mind.
you'll have many more of those, many more.
I hope so. I really hope so.
Absolutely. If you were to meet younger Vinita today, what advice would you give her?
That it's going to work out. That, like, don't worry. There is a place for you in the art world, and they are going to appreciate what you're doing now. Just stick
Oh,
with it.
wow. Love it. Shout out to an artist who's currently on your social media slash heartless, like someone you're really enjoying work, following on social media right now.
So there's this ceramic artist, and I think his name is Brian, but his Instagram handle is Energy Coop. And
Okay.
I love his work. I love his textures, his pieces. He's fairly acclaimed, but he's a contemporary artist, and just like incredible work, incredible like ode to ceramics through all the visuals that he creates in his pieces. So I love his work.
Oh,
Very
wow. I
inspired,
have to check him out. I have to.
for sure.
Okay. This is my last question. And, as
Hmm.
I feel like as creators, especially as modern age contemporary creators, I feel creativity and entrepreneurship are two very similar experiences. Now that I have
Hmm.
both, I can absolutely feel that.
Right.
What force independent for people, like it's a very self-driven practice. What is that one piece of advice you want to give to people who are creative entrepreneurs, who are artists, creatives, like creating in any sorts of form? What is that one advice you would like to share with them? Your one advice.
I think right. So I think this is a great question, and I love answering this because I wish someone had said this to me. And it would be the same thing, which is first hone in your skills. If you're making conceptual work that isn't structurally sound, or well, it can't survive, or it's not durable, there's no point in making that work. So think about the concept, of course, but also think about how resistant, durable, how sustainable your pieces, your practices. So think about all these things in terms of the long-term aspect of your work as well. Don't think about today. And then the other thing I would think is if you have all those skill sets, you've maybe gone to an art school, you've maybe gone to an intense art college, you've learned your skills, then sit and develop your concept. Because if your work is not conceptually driven, the audience is not going to believe you or believe your work. They're going to look at it, they're going to appreciate it, maybe hate it, and walk away. They're not going to say anything about it. And every artist wants something to be said about their work. I would
Yeah.
say these two aspects are equally important and, of course,
Yeah.
interdependent. So don't take either of them for granted and don't ignore the other for the other. So, yeah.
Lovely. Oh my God. Thank you so much, Vinita. This has been so amazing. Do you have any upcoming project, anything new that you want to share with us? Where can people find you? Anyone who's listening to this episode, where can they find you, support you, see your show and your work?
So my works will be available on the Cable Prescott Road website. They're making there. I think there is like a little option to kind of go into the shift artist, and then you will see my work up there. Then of course there's my Instagram, which is just Vinita Mungi, my first and last name and sculpture. Super simple, easy to find, and that's kind of like my way of giving people access to my studio practice. So I've tried to not put any finished works up there. It's just how I work, what my studio is like, how a regular day at the studio is, and those kind of things. So if you want to get a little bit more access into what a artist studio, especially a ceramic artist studio practice is like, then my Instagram is definitely the place to go. And then there's also my website, which is linked to my Instagram, so you can find it there. And that kind of has all the finished works as well. So I think.
Amazing. Very well put together, huh? Very organized. Are you an organized person?
Thank you. I am.
Figured that.
It needs to have some kind of a system. Otherwise, my brain will start short circuiting. It needs to have a system. Otherwise, I can't function.
Amazing. Oh my God. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I really wish you the best. And I hope I can have you soon back again. And it's been great knowing you.
Thank you so much. Honestly, I've had such a good time. Like, this is the other best thing I like to do outside of my studio. So I've had just as much time as I do at my studio right now, talking to you, getting to know you, listening to what you have to say to what I have to say, and vice versa has been a pleasure, and I would love to come back.
Okay, thank you so much for listening to this episode, and I'm so grateful to be sharing these amazing conversations with all these artists and like these creative professionals and people from the creative world with you. If you like this episode or if you like this show, please take this as a little reminder. It really helps us to keep this show going, to reach a new audience, and to expand our message and what we want and these stories that we're sharing with people. So make sure that once you hear this episode, if you like it, send us a review on Apple Podcast or wherever you're listening to this episode. Share it on your stories, let your friends know about it, or just cheer for our guest and interact with us on our website, on Instagram. Let us know what you think about it. It's really, really important to me that we hear from you, what you think about the podcast, what you think about our conversations, what you want to hear more about, and we genuinely want to connect with you. So I want to say again, a thank you for coming this far, and it's a request, please feel free, leave us a review on iTunes and share more about the show and this episode on your social media, and we will be happy to share for you too. We'll share your works and reshare your stories and just connect with you. And in the meantime, I'll see you back soon in another episode. Mwah. Bye.